What if attraction isn't about what you say, but about the questions you ask, and most men are asking the wrong ones? The right questions have a unique power. They bypass surface level interaction and go straight to emotion. Most conversations people have every day are predictable. They follow scripts. How are you? What do you do? Where are you from? These questions don't create connection. They simply exchange information. And information alone doesn't make someone feel anything. But emotion does, and the right questions are designed to unlock that. When you ask a question that taps into someone's experiences, passions, or memories, something shifts. Instead of thinking about what to say next, they start feeling something. Maybe it's excitement when they talk about something they love. Maybe it's nostalgia when they recall a meaningful moment. Maybe it's curiosity when they're asked something they've never thought about before. That emotional shift is where connection begins. The key difference lies in intention. Most people ask questions to keep a conversation going, but the right questions are asked to deepen it. For example, instead of asking someone what they do for fun, you might ask what kind of moments make them forget about everything else. Now, they're not just listing activities, they're describing experiences. And experiences carry emotion. That's what pulls someone closer to you psychologically. Another reason these questions are so effective is because they make a person feel seen. Everyone wants to feel understood, but very few people actually experience it. When you ask something thoughtful, something slightly deeper than usual, it signals that you're paying attention. It shows that you're not just going through the motions. And that alone can make you stand out in a world full of shallow interactions. There's also an element of surprise. When someone expects a typical question and instead hears something different, it immediately grabs their attention. It breaks the pattern. And when a pattern is broken, the brain becomes more engaged. That engagement creates a stronger impression, which is essential for attraction. People remember how you made them feel, not just what you said. But it's not just about the question itself, it's about how present you are when you ask it. If you ask something meaningful, but don't truly listen to the answer, the effect disappears. Real connection comes from the combination of asking and listening. When someone feels like they can express themselves without being rushed or judged, they naturally open up more. And the more they open up, the stronger the emotional bond becomes. Timing also plays a role. Asking a deep question too early can feel forced, while asking it at the right moment can feel natural and exciting. It's about reading the energy of the interaction and knowing when to go a little deeper. When done correctly, it doesn't feel like an interrogation, it feels like discovery. Ultimately, the right questions create emotional connection because they shift the focus from surface-level facts to meaningful experiences. They invite someone to share a part of themselves that isn't usually revealed in everyday conversation. And when that happens, the interaction becomes memorable, engaging, and real. That's the kind of connection people are naturally drawn to, and it starts with simply asking better questions. Curiosity has a quiet kind of power. It doesn't demand attention, it earns it. When you're genuinely curious about someone, you shift the entire dynamic of an interaction. Instead of trying to prove your value, you begin to discover theirs, and that change alone makes you far more attractive. Most people walk into conversations with a hidden agenda they want to be liked. So they try to impress. They talk about their achievements, exaggerate their stories, or carefully filter everything they say to sound more interesting. But this creates pressure, not just for them, but for the other person too. It turns the interaction into a performance rather than a connection, and performances are exhausting to watch. Curiosity, on the other hand, removes that pressure. When you're curious, you're not focused on how you're being perceived, you're focused on understanding the other person. That energy feels different. It feels lighter, more natural, and more engaging. People can sense when your interest is real, and that authenticity draws them in. There's also something deeply validating about being around someone who is genuinely curious about you. It makes you feel like what you say matters. Like your thoughts, your experiences, and your perspective are worth exploring. And that feeling is rare. Most people are used to being listened to, interrupted, or judged. So when they encounter someone who truly wants to understand them, it stands out immediately. Curiosity also creates a sense of mystery. When you're constantly trying to impress, you reveal too much too quickly. You're essentially putting everything on the table at once, hoping something sticks. But when you lead with curiosity, you naturally hold some things back. You're not rushing to tell your story, you're taking the time to explore theirs. This creates balance. It builds a subtle tension that keeps the interaction interesting. Another important aspect is that curiosity keeps the conversation alive. When you're trying to impress, the conversation often becomes one-sided. You talk, they listen, and then there's a pause. But when you're curious, every answer becomes a doorway to another question, another layer, another insight. The conversation flows effortlessly because it's driven by discovery rather than performance. It also shows confidence in a way that trying to impress never can. Anyone can talk about themselves. That doesn't require much risk. But choosing to focus on someone else, to explore their world without needing validation in return, signals that you're secure in who you are. You're not seeking approval, you're offering attention. And attention, when given sincerely, is incredibly powerful. Curiosity doesn't mean asking endless questions or interrogating someone. It's about being engaged. It's about listening carefully, noticing small details, and following threads that others might ignore. It's about caring enough to go a little deeper, without forcing it. In the end, attraction isn't built on how impressive you seem, it's built on how someone feels around you. And when you replace the need to impress with genuine curiosity, you create a space where someone feels valued, understood, and comfortable. That's the kind of experience people don't forget, and more often than not, it's what makes them want to come back for more. Depth has a way of cutting through the noise. In a world where most conversations stay on autopilot, going deeper instantly sets you apart. Surface-level talk is easy, it's safe, predictable, and requires almost no emotional investment. But that's exactly why it rarely creates any real connection. It passes time, but it doesn't leave an impact. When you stay on the surface, you're only exchanging information. Facts, routines, opinions, things that don't require vulnerability or thought. What do you do? How was your day? What do you like to do for fun? These questions aren't wrong, but they don't invite someone to reveal anything meaningful about themselves. They keep the interaction comfortable, but also forgettable. Depth changes that completely. It shifts the focus from what someone does to who they are. Instead of asking about activities, you explore motivations. Instead of talking about routines, you uncover experiences. And the moment someone starts sharing something real, something that actually matters to them, the entire energy of the conversation changes. What makes depth so powerful is that it creates emotional involvement. When someone talks about something meaningful, they're not just speaking, they're reliving. They feel it again as they describe it. That emotional engagement pulls you into their world in a way surface-level conversation never can. It builds a connection that feels genuine rather than forced. There's also an element of rarity. Most people don't get asked deeper questions in their everyday lives. They're used to quick, transactional conversations that stay on the surface. So when you take the time to go beyond that, it feels different. It feels intentional. And that intention makes people more open to sharing. Depth also signals confidence. It shows that you're comfortable stepping outside the usual script. You're not afraid of a moment of silence or a slightly more meaningful topic. You're willing to explore something real instead of hiding behind small talk. That kind of presence is naturally attractive because it feels grounded and authentic. But depth isn't about being intense or overly serious. It's about being thoughtful. It's about knowing how to guide a conversation just a little further than most people would. For example, instead of asking what someone enjoys doing, you might ask what makes those moments special to them. That small shift turns a simple answer into something more personal and revealing. Another important part of depth is listening. When someone shares something meaningful, how you respond matters. If you brush past it or change the subject, the moment is lost. But if you acknowledge it, explore it, and show genuine interest, the connection deepens even further. It becomes a shared experience rather than just an exchange of words. Depth also creates memorability. People might forget the details of a casual conversation, but they remember how a deeper interaction made them feel. They remember feeling understood, heard, or even surprised by how much they opened up. That emotional imprint is what separates a forgettable interaction from a meaningful one. In the end, depth beats surface-level conversation because it taps into something real. It moves beyond routine and into connection. It transforms an ordinary interaction into something engaging, personal, and lasting. And when you consistently bring that level of depth into your conversations, you don't just talk to people, you connect with them in a way most never experience. The difference between a question that builds attraction and one that creates distance often comes down to a single feeling: does she feel seen, or does she feel judged? That line is subtle, but it changes everything. Because when someone feels judged, they close off. But when they feel seen, they open up, and that's where real connection begins. Most people don't realize how easily questions can come across as judgmental. It's not always about the words themselves, but the intention behind them. For example, asking, "Why would you do that?" can feel like criticism even if you're just curious. It puts the other person in a position where they feel like they have to defend themselves. And the moment someone feels the need to defend, the emotional connection weakens. On the other hand, a question that makes someone feel seen comes from a place of understanding. Instead of challenging them, it invites them to share more of themselves. It sounds more like, "What made that important to you?" Or "How did that experience shape you?" These kinds of questions don't pressure, they open doors. They show that you're interested in their perspective, not trying to evaluate it. Feeling seen is a powerful emotional experience. It tells someone that who they are, their thoughts, their feelings, their choices matters. And in a world where people are often misunderstood or overlooked, that feeling stands out immediately. It creates comfort, trust, and a sense of safety. And when someone feels safe, they naturally become more expressive and more engaged. Another important aspect is tone. You can ask a great question, but if your tone carries even a hint of judgment, it changes how it's received. People are incredibly sensitive to subtle cues: your voice, your facial expressions, your body language. If those signals suggest criticism or doubt, the question loses its warmth. But when your tone is relaxed, open, and genuinely curious, it reassures them that they can answer freely. It's also about allowing space for their answer without trying to control it. When someone feels seen, they don't feel like they have to give the right answer. They can just be honest. But if your question feels like it's leading them toward a certain response, or if you react negatively to what they say, that freedom disappears. And with it, the authenticity of the interaction. Empathy plays a huge role here. Even if you don't fully agree with someone's perspective, showing that you can understand where they're coming from makes a difference. You don't have to validate every choice, but you can acknowledge their experience. That acknowledgement is what keeps the conversation open instead of shutting it down. Questions that make someone feel seen also tend to focus on meaning rather than mistakes. Instead of digging into what went wrong, they explore what mattered, what was learned, or what was felt. This keeps the emotional tone positive and constructive rather than critical. In the end, the goal isn't just to ask questions, it's to create an experience where someone feels comfortable being themselves. When your questions come from a place of genuine curiosity and respect, they naturally make the other person feel understood rather than evaluated. And that feeling, being truly seen without judgment, is one of the strongest foundations for attraction and connection. Most people obsess over finding the perfect line, the smartest question, or the most impressive thing to say. But in reality, the words themselves carry far less weight than how and when they're delivered. Timing and delivery are what give words their impact. Without them, even the best question can fall flat. With them, even something simple can feel powerful. Think about it. Have you ever heard someone say something completely ordinary, but the way they said it made it memorable? That's delivery. It's your tone, your pace, your eye contact, your body language. It's the calmness in your voice, the slight pause before you speak, the confidence in how you hold yourself. These elements communicate far more than the words alone ever could. Timing works the same way. You could ask a deep, meaningful question, but if you ask it too early, it feels forced. It can make the interaction uncomfortable, like you're skipping steps. Connection has a natural rhythm. It builds layer by layer. First, there's light conversation, then a bit of familiarity, and only then does it feel natural to go deeper. When you respect that rhythm, your questions feel smooth and engaging. When you ignore it, they feel out of place. One of the biggest mistakes people make is rushing. They try to force connection too quickly, either by talking too much or by jumping into heavy topics without setting the foundation. This creates pressure, and pressure kills attraction. But when you slow down, when you allow moments to breathe, everything feels more natural. You give the other person time to get comfortable, to engage, and to respond without feeling overwhelmed. Pauses are especially powerful. Most people are uncomfortable with silence, so they rush to fill it. But a well-placed pause can actually build tension and anticipation. It shows that you're not nervous, not scrambling for approval. You're in control of the moment. And that calm presence makes whatever you say next feel more intentional. Delivery also reflects confidence. You don't need to explain, or add extra words to make something land. In fact, the more you try to sell what you're saying, the weaker it becomes. Strong delivery is simple, clear, direct. It trusts that what you're saying is enough. And that kind of certainty is naturally attractive. Eye contact plays a role too. When you ask something while maintaining relaxed, steady eye contact, it signals sincerity. It shows you're fully present. But if your eyes are wandering or your attention seems divided, even a good question loses its impact. Presence amplifies delivery. It makes the other person feel like they have your full attention, and that alone deepens the interaction. Another key part of delivery is emotional alignment. If you ask a playful question, your tone should carry that playfulness. If you ask something deeper, your tone should soften slightly. When your words and your energy match, everything feels authentic. When they don't, it creates confusion and the connection weakens. In the end, words are just tools. Timing and delivery are what bring them to life. They determine whether something feels natural or forced, confident or insecure, engaging or forgettable. When you focus on how you say something and when you say it, you stop relying on perfect lines and start creating moments that feel real, effortless, and genuinely attractive. Most people think attraction is built through looks, money, or clever lines. But real attraction, lasting, magnetic attraction, comes from emotional engagement, and nothing builds that faster than the right kind of questions. Not interview, style questions. Not predictable small talk, but questions that open doors in her mind, that make her feel understood in a way she rarely experiences. When you learn how to ask like this, you stop chasing attention and start creating it. Speech. You don't attract someone by talking more. You attract someone by making them feel more. And one of the fastest ways to do that is by asking questions that pull her out of autopilot and into emotion. Most conversations fail because they stay on the surface. What do you do? Where are you from? These aren't bad, but they don't create tension, curiosity, or connection. They're safe, and safe is forgettable. The shift happens when your questions start exploring how she sees the world. Instead of asking what she does, ask what she actually enjoys about it or what she secretly wishes she could do instead. Now, you're not just learning facts, you're discovering desires. And desire is where attraction lives. Another powerful move is asking about moments, not just opinions. Anyone can give an opinion, it's rehearsed, predictable. But when you ask about a specific moment in her life, she has to feel it again to answer. That emotional recall pulls you into her world. You also want to ask questions that reveal personality, not just information. For example, instead of asking what she likes to do for fun, ask what kind of experiences make her lose track of time. That subtle shift turns a boring answer into something vivid and personal. But here's where most people mess up. They ask questions just to fill silence. That energy feels empty. Every question should come from genuine curiosity. If you're not actually interested in the answer, she'll feel it. And the moment she feels that, attraction drops. There's also a rhythm to this. You don't just fire questions one after another. You ask, you listen, and then you build on what she says. That's where the magic happens. Because now it's not an interview, it's a shared experience. And sometimes, the most powerful question is the one that challenges her perspective just a little. Not aggressively, but playfully. It shows confidence. It shows you're not just agreeing to be liked, you're engaging to connect. Another layer is asking questions that reveal emotion indirectly. People don't always open up when you ask directly about feelings, but if you ask about something meaningful, like what makes a moment unforgettable to them, you naturally uncover emotion without pressure. You also need to understand that silence is part of attraction. Ask a good question and then let it breathe. Don't rush to fill the gap. That pause builds tension. It shows you're comfortable. And comfort creates trust. And here's something most people overlook. The way you ask matters more than the question itself. Your tone, your eye contact, your presence. If those don't align, even the best question falls flat. But when they do, even a simple question can feel powerful. Attraction isn't about saying something impressive. It's about creating a space where she feels interesting, understood, and emotionally engaged. The right questions do exactly that. They shift the focus away from proving yourself and onto experiencing something together. And when you master that, you don't need to chase attention anymore. It starts coming to you naturally.